7, 8, 9. Check my hand. I'm not naughty. I'm autistic, and I just get too much information.
I'm not naughty, I'm autistic, and sometimes I get too much information. This is the reality of autism. 1 in 88 children are diagnosed with autism in the United States alone. It is the fastest growing disability in the whole world. Why is it then that we know so little about autism? Extensive research in all areas of this topic point to primarily one key issue: lack of understanding. In a study titled Global Perspectives on Autism, 60 researchers from around the globe contributed to a collection of studies aimed towards addressing the needs of those with autism around the world. Analysis of several countries all reported that the impact of raising a child with autism extends into schools and the wider community, with little awareness of autism and negative experiences of discrimination. A study by Monarch Center for Autism discovered that children with autism spectrum disorder were more likely to have unmet needs for specific healthcare services than children with other disorders, despite researchers revealing that there is now an increasingly high demand for the expansion of services for autistic students nationwide. The report shows that these services are, quote, in no way commonly provided. Misunderstanding is a huge issue in all regards. Autistic individuals are often judged by others for behaving oddly or being weird, to the point that parents may even avoid taking their autistic child out in public places rather than face the reactions from people who do not understand their condition. This may cause the child with autism and their family to become housebound and isolated, which has a profound effect on their social and emotional well-being. Parents of an autistic child who lack support, not wanting to be rejected by the outside world, will commonly avoid the rejection in the only way they see possible, by isolating themselves and their families. As a consequence, they feel guilty that their child is missing out on a normal life and discontented not being able to give their child everything they need to thrive. Disconnection, emotional and physical exhaustion, and depression often drowns the life of a parent who is too frightened of society judging them to reach out for help. Siblings also suffer serious emotional effects from growing up in this kind of stressful environment. They tend to feel as if they are unable to successfully go out as a family, and they may have trouble making friends due to dysfunction in their home. A very common occurrence when parents do not have enough support and are not fully equipped to oversee their autistic child is the sibling of said child becomes a caretaker in an attempt to help out. Siblings feel they need to take on the overwhelming responsibility of essentially becoming mom or dad. While they are straining to save one life, they are destroying their own. The pressure and neglect of a sibling having too much obligations is well documented to have long-term psychological effects on that sibling. When a family feels abandoned by the community, it can become broken and dysfunctional. In this case, not only do all members of the family miss out on living the fulfilling lives they should, but the children of this home will oftentimes not grow up in healthy environments. A family with an autistic child has the potential to bring culture and insight into people's lives when that family reaches out into communities. However, if they isolate themselves due to fear of being misunderstood or rejected, they are shortchanging themselves and others. In a different key, the story of autism transports us back into time, a time when autism was highly misunderstood. In this time period, autistic people were viewed as lepers, test subjects, or those oddities or freaks at a carnival at which the public comes to gawk at. Donald Gray Triplett was born in 1933, and he was the first person diagnosed with autism. Even in the 1970s, the attitude towards autism did not improve as public schools had and utilized the right to refuse to open its doors to those they deemed unable to educate. The authors described the story of one woman who searched for a school that would accept her autistic son. When she finally found a private school for her son, it proved to do more harm than good. In this school, her son was, quote, slapped and had diluted mustard squirted onto his face as punishments the researchers used to change his behavior. Autism is a spectrum disorder, which means that no autistic person is the same neurologically. Spectrum in autism spectrum disorder reflects the wide variation in challenges and strengths possessed by each person with autism. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD for short, ranges in severity from a handicap that somewhat limits an otherwise normal life to a challenging disability that requires much care. One way an autistic person may deal with stress is by means of performing tics. Tics, or stims, are physical or in some cases verbal actions that may seem unnatural or maybe even frightening. Due to this, tics are oftentimes shunned because they make other people feel uncomfortable, and it appears as if the child with ASD cannot control their actions. In reality, tics are usually voluntary movements, which are extremely common in most autistic people. When a tic is prohibited or discouraged, it simply worsens an already uncomfortable situation for someone with autism, because if the tic is not expressed, they will feel more uneasy than they did to begin with. My little sister Julia has autism. Julia has a stim in which she presses her lips into the crook of her elbow when she is uncomfortable and shakes around just like this. Hearing this may seem strange, and seeing it even stranger. It is for this reason that we need to understand what tics are, as to not misinterpret them. A tic, simply put, is an action done to calm oneself in an overstimulating situation. I used to get upset when Julia would perform those jerky movements, until one day I was taking her for a walk. I started talking to her and she performed her stim again. Annoyed by this point, I asked her, "Why do you do that?" To which she responded, "It makes me feel better." It was at this point that I finally started to gain some insight into her world. Stimming is not much different than biting your nails, or jiggling your leg, or maybe even drumming your finger on a desk. If an autistic individual feels too much overstimulation, they will have to find an outlet in order to calm themselves down because they feel overwhelmed. Sometimes life can be hectic, exhausting, or stressful, and we all need an outlet. Mr. Demerit once told me, in a sense, we're all somewhere on the spectrum. The 3 different questions I asked to each person I interviewed are as follows. First, are autistic people equal to others in God's eyes? Secondly, would it benefit your church to understand the needs of autistic people in order to minister to them? And lastly, do you have a ministry program for people with autism? The mainline Protestant speaker of First United Methodist Church agreed that autistic people are equal to everyone in the eyes of God because He created everyone. They also told me that nobody fully understands autism, and better understanding of it would be beneficial to their church. They also clarified that their church does not have an outreach program for autistic people. The administrator of St. Isidore Catholic Church said that autistic people are equal to others in the eyes of the Lord because we are all God's children. Although he believed understanding to be ideal, he was unsure on where to start. For the final question, I was pleased to hear that their church does have a group of parent volunteers that teach special needs children about their faith. A speaker for the Eastern Orthodox Church agreed that autistic people are equal to others in the eyes of God. They also acknowledged that it would be beneficial for their church to know more about autism. Lastly, they affirmed that they do not have an outreach program for autistic individuals. The most shocking interview I had was with a speaker for an evangelical church. He confessed to me that he felt unequipped to answer my questions about autism on behalf of his church because he didn't understand enough on the topic. Not a single church I interviewed had an outreach program that is specifically aimed towards autistic individuals. God created everyone to further glorify his kingdom of heaven. Genesis 1:27 clearly states that God created mankind in his own image. Mankind includes all people, not just those that the public consider normal. In Psalms 139, verse 13, King David elaborates more on God's creation by proclaiming that for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Each delicate part of mankind was created by God. This verse can be used as a reminder that God does not make mistakes. Although autism is something a person is born with, it does not define who they are. Ignorant titles such as retarded that are used to label an autistic person is an injustice to who that individual truly is. Defining someone only as autistic is similar to referring to someone as fat. It is a possibility that this person may be overweight, but it's unfair to let that label consume their identity. Each autistic person is an exclusive individual created by God who is full of personality, passions, and love just like you and me. Little is known about autism, and not even half of what is known about it can be covered in this presentation. So I encourage you to learn more about ASD at autismspeaks.org. I chose this topic with a hope for the future. I have hope for my little sister Julia. On several different occasions, I recall watching her in public when she would throw a tantrum, much like the boy I showed you in the video. I remember her stimming out of frustration. Without a second thought, people stare at us with disgust, as if to say, "Control your brat," not understanding our complex situation. I have witnessed girls in Julia's dance class give her one glance and say, "I don't want to be her partner. She's creepy." I have heard kids with autism spectrum disorder at my school being made fun of behind their backs. I spread awareness in hopes that one day my sister will not be called creepy, but be called beautiful. I spread awareness in hopes that one day the kids at my school will not be called weirdos, but be called friends. Thank you. Are there any questions as my assistants hand out my pamphlets?